Okay, so we're diving right in today, going courtside. You flagged this one. For me, it was the LA Clippers versus the New Orleans Pelicans from April 2nd. And I had a chance to look over the highlights that you sent over. And I mean, wow, what a matchup, right? Two of the best defensive teams in the league going head to head. And I think the thing that stood out to me right away was the commentator mentioning how the Pelicans were shorthanded, but still really hungry for that win.
Yeah, that's a compelling storyline, right? A team with something to prove up against, well, the Clippers trying to make a strong playoff push. And with both of these teams, they built their identities on defense. So it's not like we're going to see this offensive explosion, right? Every bucket was hard earned. Every possession felt magnified. And those individual matchups, I mean, they were crucial.
Definitely. And yeah, the Clippers did end up taking the win 117-107, but it definitely wasn't easy. And you can tell just watching that highlight reel how that defensive intensity really dictated the flow of the game. And I mean, just look at the numbers early on. The Clippers shot 44%, which is respectable, but they were only 8 of 31 from three-point range. So clearly the Pelicans' perimeter defense was doing work, forcing those tougher shots. Maybe the Clippers were relying a bit too much on the three ball early on, something they might have needed to adjust, don't you think?
Absolutely. And when those threes aren't falling, you have to find other ways to score right. It forces you to get creative, attack the basket more, fight for those offensive rebounds. The importance of those guys who can create their own shot in those tighter situations, I mean, that goes way up.
Totally. And speaking of creating shots, I want to rewind to some of those key moments the commentator highlighted. And we've talked about the Pelicans' determination, even though they were missing some key guys. And wouldn't you know it, Dunn gets the first bucket of the game for the Clippers. A little bit of a surprise there. But I was really impressed with Russell Westbrook's intensity on defense. He was getting those steals, disrupting the Pelicans' offense, and even putting up some points early on.
Oh, yeah. Westbrook's impact goes beyond just scoring those high energy plays, especially on the defensive end. They can really swing the momentum. A timely steal, it can be just as impactful as a made basket, gets the team fired up, throws the
Yeah,
opponent off their game. And then you had Dunn kind of becoming that early go to guy on offense for the Clippers. Those first 5 points, maybe they saw a mismatch they wanted to exploit, or they were just riding the hot hand. But either way, it was working.
definitely. And at the end of the first quarter, we saw May drain that buzzer beater to keep things close. And then a big moment for Kawhi Leonard. After struggling from three-point range in the previous game, going 0 for 6, he sinks his first three of this game after a nice drive and dish. That has to feel good, right? Especially for a shooter like him to see that first one go in.
Oh, 100%. For a guy with Kai Leonard's shooting ability, once he sees that first one drop, it can really open things up. And it shows you how the Clippers aren't just relying on set plays, right?
Yeah.
They're moving the ball, finding the open man, being creative, and that's tough to defend.
Talking about creativity, did you see that sequence with the lob from Alvarado to May and then right back out to Olin for the shot? I mean, come on. That was some high-level basketball right there, showing you how the Pelicans can create even when they're missing some key players. That speaks to their chemistry, and their awareness on the court.
Yeah.
Alvarado's got a knack for those unexpected plays. He's a real playmaker.
Yeah, he is. And that kind of improvisation often comes from a team that's really in sync. They know where each other is going to be. And you're right about Alvarado. He brings this unpredictability to their offense. You never quite know what he's going to do next.
Exactly. And then we saw Dunn get that pocket pick, which led to a Clippers fast break.
Mm.
And then Harden going right at Alvarado in the post for a bucket.
Yeah.
Both teams were clearly tricking to find those weaknesses in each other's defenses, picking on mismatches whenever they could.
For sure, those one-on-one battles and attempts to exploit any advantage are a constant part of the game. And Harden, with his size and strength against a smaller guard like Alvarado, that was a matchup the Clippers probably liked. And then on the other end, Dunn showing his defensive instincts with that steal, creating a turnover and a chance for his team to get out and run.
Now, the commentator made a point of saying that in the second half, the Clippers were looking for someone to spark their offense. Because, well, Ivica Zubac was off to a great start. I mean, 6 for 6 at one point. The rest of the team was having a tough time finding a rhythm. And it's funny how one guy playing well doesn't always translate to the whole team clicking, defenses adjust, other guys have to step up.
That's the game within the game, right? Coaches are making adjustments, players are reacting, and a hot start from Zubac probably drew more defensive attention, which in theory should open up opportunities for his teammates, but they need to knock down those shots to keep that momentum going.
You always hear about how basketball is a game of runs, and this game was no exception. But there was this one moment that really stood out to me. It was Nico Batum, the veteran. making this heads-up play, anticipating a pass, and the commentator even mentioned how it felt like a momentum shift. A big boost for the Clippers, especially considering Batum's journey back to the NBA after playing overseas. Just goes to show you, experience matters.
It really does. And those instincts and that veteran savvy, they're so valuable, especially in a close game. And, Batum has seen it all. He knows how to read the game and make those smart decisions that might not show up in the box score, but can make all the difference.
For sure. And the game was back and forth. Both teams were trading baskets, matching each other's energy. The commentator even mentioned at one point that the Clippers needed to pull away, which tells you how competitive the Pelicans were staying, even without some key players.
Absolutely. And that speaks volumes about the Pelicans coaching staff and their players' next man up mentality. They were executing their game plan, not backing down, forcing the Clippers to earn every bucket. And I think for the Clippers, there was that expectation that with their talent, they should be in control.
Yeah, and even though the Clippers weren't shooting well from three, Kawhi Leonard, he was just doing Kawhi Leonard things, hitting those tough shots. And the commentator even mentioned how much they're going to need him down the stretch to make a strong playoff push. He's just that important to their success.
There's a reason he's considered one of the best players in the league. His ability to create his own shot, get to his spots, even when the defense is all over him, and just knock down those clutch baskets. That's what separates him from the rest.
Now, I don't know if you caught this, but the commentator pointed out that Seth Curry actually hit a milestone in this game. He achieved the second most three-pointers made total off the bench in NBA history.
That's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah, it really is. And it goes to show you how consistent he's been throughout his career, coming off the bench, providing that instant offense. And for a team like the Clippers, with championship aspirations, that kind of scoring punch off the bench is invaluable.
One guy we kept hearing about throughout the game was Jose Alvarado, and the commentator kept using the word pesky to describe his play. And I think that's the perfect word. He was everywhere, getting those steals, leading to fast breaks, knocking down those fadeaway jumpers, dishing out assists. He was a constant thorn in the side of the Clippers. He's one of those guys that you hate to play against, but you love to have on your team, right? His energy is contagious, and he makes things happen, and you can tell he's got that dog in him on defense. He never gives up on a play.
And we saw some great examples of teamwork on both sides.
Yeah.
You had these plays where the Clippers would double team, and that would lead to open looks for cutters like Amir Coffey going backdoor for the easy layup. Shows you, even against a tough defense, good ball movement and court awareness can lead to good looks.
100%. You can't just rely on isolation plays all the time. Those double teams create opportunities, and if the other players are ready to cut to the basket, find those open spaces, you can make the defense pay.
Defensively, the Clippers did a great job of challenging the Pelicans' three-point shooters. At one point, they were just 1 for 8 from beyond the arc. That kind of defense can really shut down an offense.
They say defense wins championships, and in today's NBA, where the three-pointer is so important, if you can take away that part of the game, you can really disrupt an opponent's rhythm.
Now, there were so many great individual plays and battles throughout this game. You had Little Leonard knocking down those contested fadeaway jumpers, just pure skill. Alvarado with that impressive runner in the lane, showing off his athleticism, and a deflection by Alvarado leading to another fast break. The guy was everywhere.
He really was. And then you had Harden using his veteran moves to draw those fouls, get to the free throw line. These are those moments where individual talent takes over and can really swing the momentum,
Absolutely. And one thing I noticed was the commentator mentioning how the Clippers were almost encouraging Dunn to shoot those open threes whenever he had the chance, which tells me they weren't too worried about his range. They were willing to give him those looks.
Yeah, that's a common defensive strategy. Teams will often sag off on those guys who aren't known for their shooting. It's a gamble, but if it pays off, it can really disrupt the other team's offense.
Then you had Jose Leonard hitting another three after getting knocked down. Talk about toughness and focus. And then on the other end, Alvarado with his incredible underhanded pass to Olin for a dunk. Just beautiful basketball to watch.
Yeah, those are the kinds of plays that make you jump out of your seat, and those moments can be so deflating for the other team. It's like no matter what we do, they find a way to score.
And even with all that defensive pressure, Bulk-Leonard was still getting his buckets. He's just so tough to guard. And then you had Powell knocking down a three, Zubac, finding Bogdanovich wide open for another three, so it wasn't all on his shoulders.
Right, and that's what makes the Clippers so dangerous. They have multiple guys who can score, and when they're all clicking, they're really tough to beat.
Bogdanovich really came off the bench strong for the Clippers. He hit a few threes, and I think the commentator mentioned that his second made basket was also a three, and it was wide open. I mean, that kind of instant offense off the bench can change the whole game.
No question about it. And, in the NBA playoffs especially, you need those guys who can come in and provide that spark, change the momentum, because sometimes your starters just don't have it going. And Bogdanovich did exactly that.
And I know we talked about Zubac's hot start earlier, but it wasn't just his scoring. It was his rebounding, his presence in the paint. He was a factor all night long.
A reliable center who can control the boards, finish around the rim, that's so important for any team. And Zubac does all of that for the Clippers.
The fourth quarter was where the Clippers really started to pull away. And the commentator pointed out this 20-6 run they had in points off turnover. So clearly, taking care of the ball was a big factor down the stretch.
Oh, yeah, especially against a team like the Clippers, who are so good defensively. If you give them extra possessions with turnovers, you're asking for trouble.
Now, even though the Pelicans were down, they didn't quit. And we saw some nice plays from their rookies, Brooks and Makovich, which is encouraging for their future. Absolutely, that's a sign of a well-coached team. They keep fighting no matter the score, and it's great for those young guys to get some experience in a tight game like this. In the final minutes, Juan Leonard kept scoring. He finished with 28 points. Zubac had some key buckets late to keep the Clippers ahead. There was a nice dunk from Kane for the Pelicans, and then that cool moment between Coach Lue and Coach Green after the buzzer showing respect. The final score again, 117-107 Clippers win. And what impressed me was their efficiency, 50% shooting, and 66 points in the paint against a top defense.
Yeah, that's a statement right there. To dominate the paint like that against a team that prides itself on defense, it shows you how well-rounded the Clippers are.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. A real defensive battle. The Clippers got the win, but the Pelicans showed a lot of fight. We saw great performances from Kawhi Leonard, Jose Alvarado, Bogdanovich, Zubac. The list goes on. What are some of the takeaways that stand out to you?
For me, it's how the game shifted back and forth. You could see both coaches making adjustments, trying to counter each other's moves, and the fact that the Clippers struggled from three, but dominated in the paint. That shows you how adaptable they can be, and then the impact of those bench players. It's a reminder that in the NBA, depth is so crucial, especially in the playoffs.
Couldn't agree more. And here's a final thought for our listeners. Imagine these two teams meeting in a playoff series. 7 games. Each team learning and adjusting to the other. What kind of offensive strategies would be needed to break down those defenses night after night? This game was just a taste of what that chess match would look like.
I like that, and I think you'd see a lot of creative play calling, maybe more reliance on off-ball movement, back cuts, screens, things that can create those split-second advantages against a set defense.
It'll be a fascinating series to watch, that's for sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for this deep dive. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Always a pleasure.